She is so annoying. Continue, honey, Thomas Harrington murmured seductively to Lillian Hayes, his white lover, as they tangled in the sheets of the apartment, his phone still clutched in his hand after what he thought was a loving call to his wife, Penda Nkosi. Unbeknownst to him, the line hadn't disconnected, and Penda, a strong black woman returning early from a business trip to surprise him, overheard every cruel word, his mocking chuckle about her desperation for love in their interracial marriage, Lillian's sneering laugh at her vulnerabilities. As the betrayal unfolded in real time, Penda's world shattered on her doorstep, the humiliation cutting deeper than any affair alone. Where are you tuning in from today? Perhaps from a bustling city like New York or a quiet town abroad? What's your guess on how this story of deceit, racial undertones, and quiet revenge will unfold? If you're hooked already, hit that subscribe button to catch our latest tales of heartbreak and empowerment, and drop a comment sharing your location and predictions. We love hearing from you and building this community together. Will Penda stay silent forever, or will her calculated moves expose everything? Stay tuned to find out. The city lights streaked across the rain-slicked windows of the taxi like fleeting promises, blurring into a kaleidoscope of neon and shadow as Penda Nkosi leaned back against the worn leather seat. Her suitcase, a faithful companion through countless airport lounges and hotel lobbies, rested at her feet, its wheels still humming from the journey. She had cut her business trip short by a full day, a spontaneous decision born from that familiar ache of missing home, or rather, missing him. Thomas Harrington, her husband of 5 years, the man whose sharp intellect and easy charm had once swept her off her feet in a whirlwind romance that defied the odds. Their marriage wasn't perfect. What union ever was? His world as a high-powered corporate lawyer often pulled him into late nights and high-stakes negotiations, while her career in marketing demanded creativity and resilience, in a field where her black skin sometimes felt like an unspoken barrier. Yet she believed in them, in the way their love bridged those invisible chasms, the subtle racial undertones from his family gatherings, the occasional sidelong glances from strangers who couldn't quite reconcile a poised African woman with a polished white man. Tonight she would surprise him, slip into their suburban haven with arms open, reigniting the spark that had dimmed under the weight of routines. The taxi slowed to a halt outside their two-story home, nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac where manicured lawns whispered of stability and success. Penda's heart quickened with anticipation as she paid the driver, the crisp bills exchanging hands under the glow of the street lamp. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a missed call from Thomas. A smile tugged at her lips. Perfect timing. She dialed back, stepping out into the cool evening air, the faint scent of jasmine from the garden wrapping around her like a welcome embrace. "Hey, love," she murmured softly, her voice carrying the warmth of distant miles bridged. "I just wanted to check in before my meeting wraps up." On the other end, Thomas's tone was tender, that familiar baritone that had first captivated her at a networking event years ago. "You always know how to brighten my day, Penda. Miss you already. Feels like you've been gone forever." They chatted lightly, weaving plans for a cozy dinner, perhaps that Italian place downtown, where they had celebrated their anniversary. "Love you," he said, the words wrapping around her like a blanket. "Love you more," she replied, giggling softly as she ended the call. Or so she thought. Her finger must have grazed the screen imperfectly, for as she wheeled her suitcase toward the front door, key in hand, the line lingered open, a silent witness to what came next. Intending to slip inside quietly to surprise him with a hug from behind, Penda paused on the doorstep, her hand hovering over the knob. Static hissed through the speaker, faint but insistent, and then Thomas's voice again, but stripped of its affection, laced instead with a mocking edge that sent ice through her veins. "She bought it again," he chuckled, low and derisive, as if sharing a private joke. A woman's voice joined in, light and cruel, slicing through the night air like a sharpened blade. "She's so desperate for love, it's pathetic." Penda's breath caught, her world tilting on its axis. That laugh, unmistakable, crystalline, laced with a familiarity that twisted her gut. It belonged to Lillian Hayes, her best friend since their college days, the white woman who had stood by her through the storms of life. Job losses that hit harder because of unspoken biases. The quiet prejudices from Thomas's circle that Lillian had always dismissed with a supportive squeeze of the hand. Lillian, her maid of honor, who had toasted their wedding with tears in her eyes, proclaimed them a beacon of modern love. Penda's fingers tightened around the phone, knuckles paling against her dark skin as she pressed it harder to her ear, unable to sever the connection. She couldn't hang up now. It was as if an invisible force held her captive, forcing her to witness the unraveling. They continued, their words a venomous dissection of her soul. "You know, she still writes in that little journal of hers," Thomas sneered, his voice dripping with ridicule. "All those entries about building a family, making our diverse life work, despite the stares. As if anyone cares." Lillian's laughter bubbled up again, sharp and unfeeling. "She thinks we're her perfect little interracial fairy tale. And you play the devoted white knight so well, Thomas. It's almost admirable how you string her along." The betrayal crashed over Penda like a tidal wave. Not merely the sting of infidelity, but the profound humiliation of being mocked for her deepest yearnings, the vulnerability she had shared in quiet moments, trusting them both with her heart. Her mind raced, fragments of memories flashing like lightning. Weekend getaways where Lillian had spontaneously joined them, her laughter filling the car as Thomas drove. Late-night confessions over wine about navigating a world that often viewed their marriage through a lens of skepticism. Had it all been a facade? Covers for this? Penda's legs weakened, and she fumbled with the key, slipping inside the darkened house as silently as a ghost. The door clicked shut behind her, the familiar scent of their home. Thomas's cologne mingled with the faint aroma of last night's dinner, now turning her stomach. She sank onto the couch in the living room, the phone still clutched to her ear, tears stinging her eyes but refusing to fall just yet. The call droned on, their voices fading into muffled intimacy, until finally, mercifully, it dropped. But the echo remained, reverberating through her chest, unraveling every thread of the life she had built. How long had this been festering? Penda wondered, her pulse thundering in her ears as she stared into the shadows of the room. The humiliation seeped in like poison, slow and insidious, eroding the foundation of trust she had so carefully constructed. She wasn't just betrayed, she was ridiculed, reduced to a punchline in their secret world. Her hand trembled as she set the phone down, the screen glowing faintly in the dim light, a cruel reminder of the deception. Outside, the night pressed on, oblivious, but inside Pendencosi, a storm was brewing, one that would demand reckoning, though for now it simmered in silent, shattering agony. The silence in the living room was deafening, a heavy shroud that amplified every ragged breath Pendencosi drew as she sat frozen on the couch, the phone now a lifeless weight in her lap. The words from that accidental eavesdrop replayed in her mind like a venomous loop, each syllable carving deeper into her soul. Desperate. Pathetic. How could they? Thomas and Lillian, the two pillars she had leaned on through life's tempest, reduce her to such cruel caricatures. Overwhelmed, her thoughts spiraled into a torrent of flashbacks, vivid and unrelenting, pulling her under like a riptide. She remembered the gala 2 years ago, a glittering affair hosted by Thomas's firm, where whispers of mismatched and exotic choice had slithered through the crowd like smoke. Thomas had been her shield then, his arm firm around her waist as he leaned in close, his voice a low growl of defiance. "Ignore them, Penda. They're just jealous of what we have, a real connection in a sea of superficiality." His blue eyes had locked onto hers, fierce and protective, making her feel seen, valued, and unbreakable. And Lillian had been there too, her white ally in a room full of sidelong glances, pulling Penda aside later with a conspiratorial wink. "Girl, you own that room. Thomas is lucky to have you fighting by his side." They had laughed over champagne, Lillian's hand on her shoulder a gesture of solidarity. But now those memories twisted, poisoned. Had Thomas's defense been an act, a performance to keep her hooked? Had Lillian's comfort been laced with pity, or worse, amusement at her naivety? Deeper wounds resurfaced, raw and aching. The miscarriage last year, a quiet devastation that had hollowed her out for weeks. Thomas had held her through the nights, his whispers soothing as he stroked her hair. "We'll get through this together, my love. You're the strongest woman I know." His tenderness had been her anchor, pulling her back from the brink. Lillian had shown up unannounced with flowers and tea, sitting on the edge of the bed, tears mirroring Penda's own. "I'm here for you, always. You've got a sister in me, no matter what." Penda had clung to that bond, believing it unbreakable, a rare friendship that transcended the racial divides she navigated daily. Yet now it all felt like a meticulously crafted illusion, their betrayal not just physical, but a desecration of her most vulnerable moments. How many times had they laughed behind her back at her desperation for a family, for stability in a world that often treated her love as an anomaly? Her fingers, trembling with a mix of rage and sorrow, found the gold wedding band on her left hand. It caught the faint light from the lamp, gleaming mockingly against her rich, dark skin. A symbol once cherished, now a shackle forged in deceit. With a sharp twist, she yanked it off, the metal cool and indifferent as it slipped free. She placed it on the coffee table with deliberate care, as if it were a fragile artifact from a life that no longer belonged to her. Staring at it, Penda felt a sob rise in her throat, but she swallowed it down, refusing to let the tears fall. Not yet, not while the wound was still fresh and gaping. Upstairs in the sanctuary of her home office, a space cluttered with marketing briefs and inspirational quotes pinned to the walls, she sought refuge. The old leather journal, tucked away in a drawer like a forgotten confidant, called to her. She pulled it out, its pages whispering secrets from happier times. Flipping to a blank sheet, her pen hovered, then descended with furious intent. "They think I'm desperate," she scrawled, the ink bleeding slightly where a stray tear smudged the paper. Words poured out in a torrent, the overheard mockery, the dissection of her journal entries, the ridicule of her efforts to build a diverse family. Each stroke was a release, a silent scream against the humiliation that threatened to consume her. By the time she closed the journal, her hand ached, but a fragile clarity had begun to emerge from the chaos. Hours blurred into one another until the front door clicked open, heralding Thomas's return. He entered with his usual nonchalance, a takeout bag swinging from his hand, the aroma of Thai curry filling the air. "Babe, I got your favorite, Pad CU with extra shrimp," he called out, his voice light, oblivious. Penda rose from the couch, forcing a smile that felt like a mask cracking at the edges. She nodded through his chatter about a grueling client meeting, her responses mechanical, her body stiff as he leaned in for a quick kiss on the cheek. Did he notice the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes avoided his? If he did, he didn't care. Or perhaps he was too wrapped up in his own web of lies to see the fractures. They ate in relative silence, the clink of forks a hollow soundtrack to her inner turmoil. That night, as Thomas slept soundly beside her, his breathing even and untroubled, Penda lay awake, staring at the ceiling shadows dancing like ghosts. The bed, once a haven of intimacy, now felt like a battlefield. She replayed the day's horrors, her mind a whirlwind of strategy amid the pain. No outbursts, she decided, no dramatic confrontations that would give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Silence would be her shield, a calculated veil behind which she could observe, gather strength, and transform her agony into armor. She would watch, wait, and when the time came, strike with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. In the days that followed, Penda moved through their home like a shadow, ethereal and unnoticed, her presence a quiet specter haunting the routines they had built. She journaled relentlessly, the pages filling with tainted memories that now revealed their sinister undercurrents. There was the barbecue last summer where Lillian had accidentally spilled red wine on Thomas's crisp white shirt, her laughter pealing as she dabbed at it with a napkin, her fingers lingering just a touch too long on his arm. Penda had brushed it off then as clumsy affection. Now it screamed of flirtation, a bold move right under her nose. Family holidays surfaced too, those awkward gatherings at Thomas's parents' estate, where Lillian, ever the honorary family member, shared inside jokes with him about cultural differences, their eyes sparkling with shared secrets while Penda smiled politely, feeling like an outsider in her own marriage. One afternoon, her phone vibrated with a text from Lillian, a meme depicting a woman wide-eyed in bed, overthinking while her partner snored, captioned, "This is so you, girl. LOL." The audacity burned like acid. Penda stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the reply button, a storm of responses brewing, accusations, questions, raw fury. But she deleted the draft, ignoring it entirely. Let Lillian wonder at the silence. Let it fester. Penda's journal absorbed the rage instead, another entry in her growing archive of betrayals. She was no longer the trusting wife, the loyal friend. She was evolving, her pain forging something sharper, more resilient. The illusions had shattered, leaving behind a woman poised on the edge of revelation, her heart scarred, but her resolve unbreakable. The air in the dining room hummed with the soft clatter of silverware and the murmur of conversation, a veneer of normalcy that Pendan Kosi clung to like a lifeline amid the storm raging within. She had orchestrated this small dinner party herself, a gathering of close friends and colleagues, ostensibly to celebrate a recent promotion at her marketing firm. But in truth, it was a stage, a controlled arena where she could observe without suspicion. Candles flickered on the long oak table, casting warm shadows that danced across the faces of the guests, illuminating smiles that now seemed performative, rehearsed. Thomas moved about with his effortless charisma, the corporate lawyer in him shining through as he poured wine and cracked jokes, his white shirt crisp against the dim light. Lillian arrived fashionably late, her blonde hair cascading in loose waves, a bottle of chilled rosé in hand, as she air-kissed cheeks and exclaimed over the decor. "Penda, darling, you've outdone yourself. This spread is divine." Her voice was honeyed, but Penda heard the undercurrent now, a subtle sharpness that had always been there, masked by friendship. Penda watched from the periphery, her dark eyes sharp as obsidian daggers, cataloging every nuance. She had dressed carefully for the occasion, a sleek black dress that hugged her curves, accentuating the grace she refused to let betrayal diminish. As the evening unfolded, she positioned herself at the head of the table, a silent sentinel. Thomas refilled Lillian's glass without a word from her, his fingers brushing the stem just a fraction too long, a gesture that might have passed unnoticed before, but now screamed intimacy. Their eyes met across the table, a fleeting lock laden with unspoken secrets. And Penda's stomach twisted, a cold knot forming. When had she become so attuned to these micro-betrayals? The grief that had once consumed her, raw and all-encompassing, was evolving, sharpening into something more potent. Calculated vigilance. She sipped her wine slowly, the tartness mirroring the bitterness in her throat, and made mental notes, fragments she would later commit to her journal like evidence in a trial. Laughter erupted as one guest, a mutual colleague named Sarah, teased the group about old stories. "You two," Sarah said, pointing between Thomas and Lillian with a grin. "You're always in sync. It's like you share a brain, or at least a secret language." The table chuckled, but Penda seized the moment, her voice emerging soft and laced with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "They've always been annoyingly aligned, in more ways than one." The words hung in the air, subtle as a whisper yet weighted like lead. A brief hush fell, the kind that follows a veiled barb, and Lillian's smile faltered, her blue eyes darting to Penda with a flicker of uncertainty. Thomas cleared his throat, steering the conversation elsewhere with a joke about office politics. But Penda saw it, the crack in their facade, the momentary unease that confirmed her suspicions. Her heart pounded, not with pain now, but with a thrill of empowerment. This was no longer mere survival, it was strategy, a game where she held the hidden cards. As the night wore on, Penda's observations deepened, her journal entries already forming in her mind. The way Lillian leaned in when Thomas spoke, her laughter a touch too enthusiastic, the shared glance over a reference to a spa weekend that Penda now knew aligned suspiciously with one of Thomas's business trips. She interjected sparingly, her comments neutral on the surface but probing beneath, testing the waters without capsizing the boat. By dessert, a rich chocolate torte she had baked herself, the shift was palpable within her. Grief had been a fog, obscuring her path. Now it cleared, revealing a road paved with intent. The party ended with hugs and promises of future gatherings, Lillian's embrace lingering awkwardly as she whispered, "We need a girls' night soon." Penda nodded, her smile a perfect mask, but inside the vigilance burned bright. Desperate for a tether to reality, a space free from the charade, Penda slipped away the next evening, her car gliding through the twilight streets toward her cousin Aisha's modest bungalow on the city's edge. The drive was a blur of streetlights and introspection, her hands gripping the wheel as if to anchor herself. Aisha, with her no-nonsense demeanor and warm heart, had always been Penda's rock, a woman who had navigated her own share of heartaches, including a messy divorce years ago. Pulling into the driveway, Penda barely turned off the engine before Aisha appeared at the door, her intuition sharp as ever. Without a word, she enveloped Penda in a hug, the kind that spoke volumes, strong arms wrapping around her, scented with lavender and understanding. "Come in, sis," Aisha murmured, leading her to the cozy kitchen, where the kettle already whistled on the stove. They settled at the worn wooden table, mugs of chamomile tea steaming between them, the steam curling like unspoken confessions. Aisha waited patiently, her brown eyes steady, giving Penda the space to unravel. Finally, the dam broke. "I overheard them, Thomas and Lillian, mocking me," Penda whispered, her voice cracking for the first time since that fateful call. She recounted the betrayal in halting bursts, the static on the line, the cruel laughter, the dissection of her vulnerabilities. Aisha listened without interruption, her face a mask of quiet fury. But when Penda finished, she reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "They don't deserve your tears, Penda, but you deserve the truth. And a plan." Bolstered by Aisha's presence, Penda pulled out her journal, its pages a testament to her resolve. Together they transcribed the overheard call, word for word, Penda's pen flying across the paper as she recalled every sneer, every jab. "She bought it again," she wrote, underlining the ridicule. Then came the list, evidence pieced together like a mosaic of deceit. Coinciding work trips, where Thomas returned with unexplained trinkets, perhaps souvenirs from stolen moments. Lillian's sudden spa weekends that matched his absences, her social media posts suspiciously vague. "Remember that conference in Chicago?" Aisha prompted, her voice low. "He came back with that silk scarf he said was for his secretary, but Lillian wore something similar the next week." Penda nodded, adding it to the tally, the act of documentation transforming her pain into power. Aisha brewed more tea, offering wisdom born of experience. "Gather it all, but don't rush. Let them underestimate you. That's your edge." As the evening deepened, Penda felt a subtle shift, the weight on her chest lightening fractionally. Aisha's home, with its scattered family photos and the faint hum of a radio in the background, was a sanctuary, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this unraveling. By the time she left, journal tucked under her arm, her steps were steadier. The veiled observations had become her armor, each noted glance and whispered word a brick in the wall she was building around her heart. Vigilance wasn't just survival. It was the prelude to reclamation, a quiet fire kindling in the depths of her soul. The invitation had arrived like a poisoned chalice, scripted in Lillian's elegant cursive on cream cardstock. A birthday brunch at a chic downtown cafe, all pastel balloons and mimosa towers. Penda and Kosi stared at it for days before deciding to go, her resolve steeled by the quiet fire Aisha had ignited in her. This wasn't surrender, it was reconnaissance, a chance to gather fragments of truth amid the facade. She dressed with precision, a flowing sundress in deep crimson that complemented her warm brown skin, earrings dangling like talismans of strength. As she drove through the bustling streets, the city's hum a distant roar against her focused thoughts, Penda rehearsed her composure in the rearview mirror. Smile, nod, observe. Let them reveal themselves. The cafe buzzed with laughter and the clink of champagne flutes, a sunlit haven of white tablecloths and fresh florals. Lillian spotted her immediately, her face lighting up in that practiced glow of affection. "Penda, you made it!" she exclaimed, pulling her into a hug that felt like velvet over thorns. Penda endured it, her body rigid beneath the embrace, inhaling Lillian's signature perfume, jasmine and deceit. "Of course," Penda replied smoothly, her voice a melody of faint warmth. "Wouldn't miss celebrating you." Compliments flowed like the endless mimosas, Lillian gushing over Penda's dress, the other guests, mutual friends from their intertwined social circle, chiming in with stories of old adventures. But Penda's eyes were elsewhere, scanning for cracks. Thomas arrived midway, bearing a wrapped gift box tied with gold ribbon, his entrance commanding as always. He kissed Penda's cheek perfunctorily before turning to Lillian with a broader smile. "Happy birthday, Lil. Thought you liked this." Inside was a delicate silk scarf, one Lillian had admired in a boutique window during a girl's day. Penda now suspected was anything but. She watched their interactions like a hawk circling prey. The way Thomas's hand grazed Lillian's as he passed the gift, the shared laugh over an inside joke about a disastrous client lunch that excluded her. The brunch dragged on, plates of avocado toast and fruit platters passed around, but Penda's appetite was non-existent. Her mind raced, piecing together the puzzle. By the time goodbyes were exchanged, Lillian's parting hug lingering with a whisper of, "We need to catch up soon," Penda felt the weight of unspoken knowledge pressing on her chest. But it was later that day, back in the quiet of their home, that the real evidence surfaced. Thomas had left his briefcase open on the study desk, a careless oversight amid his post-brunch nap. Penda hesitated at the door, her heart pounding a staccato rhythm, before stepping in. The leather case yawned invitingly, papers spilling slightly from the top. She rifled through them with feather-light touches, her breath-shallow bills, contracts, mundane legal drivel, until her fingers brushed a thicker document, edges crisp and official, a lease agreement. Her eyes scanned the details hungrily, a downtown apartment, sleek and modern, rented under Thomas Harrington's name, but the co-resident line stopped her cold. Lillian Hayes. Not a typo, not a coincidence. Boldly listed, as if their audacity knew no bounds. This wasn't a fleeting affair. It was a planned escape, a parallel life built on the ruins of hers. The confirmation hit like a thunderclap, hardening her resolve into something unyielding, diamond sharp. She photographed the document with her phone, every page captured in high resolution, before slipping it back exactly as found. Her hands didn't shake. The tremor was internal, a seismic shift from victim to avenger. Back in the bedroom, Penda stood before the full-length mirror, her reflection a warrior in repose. "They underestimated you," she whispered, her voice low and fierce, meeting her gaze with unflinching intensity. The woman staring back was no longer shattered. She was reassembling, piece by jagged piece. Suspicion, once a whisper, now roared, urging her onward. That evening, as Thomas stirred from his nap with a yawn and a casual, "How was the rest of your day?" Penda smiled faintly, deflecting with talk of work emails. But alone later, scrolling through social media in the dim glow of her screen, another thread unraveled. Lillian's Instagram story popped up, a fleeting video of a champagne toast in an unfamiliar setting. Plush cushions, low lighting, the pop of a cork echoing tinnily. "Celebrating life," the caption read, but Penda paused it, zooming in with surgical precision. There, in the reflection of the crystal glass, broad shoulders, a familiar watch glinting on a wrist. The outline of Thomas's profile caught mid-laugh. Her breath hitched, the evidence irrefutable. She screenshot it multiple times, annotating the details in her notes app. The timestamp aligning with Thomas's late meeting excuse from last week. The pieces fit too neatly now, a mosaic of lies laid bare. The weight of it all propelled her back to Aisha's doorstep that night, the drive a blur of streetlights streaking like tears she refused to shed. Aisha answered in her robe, concern etching her features as she pulled Penda inside. "What's happened now?" Over kitchen counter confessions, fueled by strong coffee, Penda laid it all bare. The brunch charade, the lease agreement's damning revelation, the Instagram betrayal frozen in pixels. She showed the photos, the screenshots, her voice steady but laced with fire. It's not just cheating. It's a whole other life they're building. Aisha's eyes narrowed, her own past scars fueling empathy and rage. Bastards, she muttered, then leaned forward, gripping Penda's hands. But you're smarter than this pain. Fight smart, not loud. Gather your proof. Every text, every slip-up. Build your case like the powerhouse you are. When you strike, make it count. They pored over the evidence together, Aisha suggesting angles Penda hadn't considered, cross-referencing dates from the lease with Thomas's calendar, archiving Lillian's stories before they vanished. The journal grew thicker that night, pages filled with timelines and annotations, transforming raw hurt into a blueprint of liberation. As Penda drove home under the starless sky, the city's pulse mirroring her own, she felt the evidence coalescing. Not just facts, but fuel. They had mocked her desperation. Now, it would be their undoing. The gathering storm was hers to command. Each shred of proof a thunderbolt waiting to strike. The shadows lengthened across Penda and Kosi's bedroom as the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting a golden haze that did little to warm the chills settling in her bones. She sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a scattering of old keepsakes pulled from a dusty shoebox in the closet, a tangible dive into the past, driven by an insatiable need to unearth the roots of betrayal. Her journal lay open beside her, pages already brimming with fresh entries, but today called for something deeper. Audio relics from a time when trust had been her compass. Plugging in her earbuds, she scrolled through her phone's voice memo app, fingers hesitating over a folder labeled Wedding Prep. These clips, recorded during the whirlwind months leading to her marriage, had once been treasures, brainstorm sessions with Lillian, filled with excitement and laughter. Now they promised poison, and Penda steeled herself, pressing play on the first one. Lillian's voice filled her ears, bright and effusive, as if transported from a sunnier era. If I were you, Penda, I'd hold on to Thomas with both hands. Men like him don't come around twice. Charming, successful, and he looks at you like you're the only woman in the room. Back then, it had felt like genuine advice, a sister's endorsement of her interracial fairy tale. But now the words sliced like a double-edged blade, veiled jabs dripping with irony. Penda paused the memo, her breath catching. Was this mockery even then? Lillian positioning herself as the wise confidant while secretly coveting what Penda held? She replayed it, dissecting the tone, the slight lilt on hold on to, the emphasis on men like him. It wasn't reassurance. It was a taunt, a subtle reminder of Penda's perceived desperation in a world where black women like her often navigated love with guarded hearts. Another memo crackled to life, Lillian giggling over seating charts. Stop overthinking it, girl. At the end of the day, it's you and he against the world. Nothing else matters. Penda's fist clenched, the irony burning. Nothing else, except apparently Lillian herself, weaving into their narrative like a shadow. These weren't just innocent recordings. They were artifacts of manipulation. Lillian memorizing Penda's vulnerabilities like a predator studying prey. The journal absorbed it all. Penda scribbling furiously, labeling a new section Receipts. This wasn't mere venting. It was an archive, a digital and physical vault of deceptions. She documented Thomas's lies with clinical precision. Those late nights at the office, returning home with the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume. Client dinners that stretched into dawn, his phone silenced and face averted. Each entry transformed her pain, alchemizing raw agony into preparation. The journal evolving from a confessional into a blueprint for departure. A map of exits, assets, and contingencies. Her heartache, once a wild storm, now simmered into focused resolve, each receipt a brick in her fortress. She cross-referenced dates, a voice memo from Lillian about a girl's trip that aligned suspiciously with Thomas's conference absences, gifts exchanged under the guise of friendship that now reeked of compensation. The process was exhaustive, draining, yet empowering. Penda rising from the floor hours later, her back aching but her spirit ignited. The past wasn't just history, it was ammunition. revealing how deeply the rot had set in. It was during this introspective haze that Marcus Blackwell entered the fray, his arrival as timely as it was unexpected. Penda's high school friend, a towering figure in the tech world, a black CEO who had bootstrapped his way to millionaire status with an empire of innovative apps, had always possessed an uncanny perceptiveness, honed by years of navigating boardrooms, where he was often the only one who looked like him. He showed up unannounced one morning, bearing coffee from her favorite spot, his knock firm and familiar. "Figured you could use a caffeine hit," he said with a warm smile, his deep voice carrying the easy confidence of old bonds. Penda let him in, masking her turmoil with small talk, but Marcus's sharp eyes missed nothing. The subtle withdrawal in her posture, the shadows under her eyes that no concealer could hide. They settled in the living room, steaming mugs in hand, the aroma of dark roast mingling with unspoken tension. Marcus didn't pry at first, sharing updates on his latest venture, a app revolutionizing mental health access for underserved communities, but his gaze lingered, probing. "You've been quiet lately, Penda. Not just today. It's like you're pulling back from the world." She deflected lightly, blaming work stress, but he wasn't fooled. "Come on, we've known each other since debating club in high school. I see it, the light's dimming in you." His concern was genuine, a brother's vigilance, and for a moment Penda's walls cracked, tears pricking her eyes. Yet she held back, not ready to voice the full betrayal. Marcus's intuition extended beyond their chat. It propelled him to action. At a family lunch hosted by Thomas's extended relatives, a sprawling affair of grilled meats and polite chatter in a sun-dappled backyard, he cornered Thomas privately near the barbecue pit, the sizzle of steaks providing a tense backdrop. "Penda looks like she's fading, man," Marcus said bluntly, handing Thomas a drink but holding his gaze steady. "You're neglecting her. It's written all over her." Thomas shrugged, his casual dismissal a shield. "She's sensitive, always has been. Work's been insane, it'll pass." But Marcus pressed, his voice low and insistent, drawing on years of observing Penda's strength. "Sensitive? You used to adore that about her. Her fire, her resilience. Now you're acting like she's a burden. What the hell is going on?" The words hung heavy, a direct challenge that made Thomas shift uncomfortably, his eyes avoiding Marcus's. "You don't know everything," Thomas muttered, evading with a sip of his beer. But Marcus didn't relent. "Maybe not, but I know enough to see you're dimming her spark. You used to light up talking about her. Now, it's like she's an afterthought." The confrontation lingered in the air, unspoken accusations crackling like the coals beneath the grill. But Thomas offered no defense, his silence a tacit admission. Marcus recounted the exchange to Penda later, over a phone call that stretched into the evening, his voice a balm against her isolation. "He's slipping, Penda. Whatever's eating at you, know you've got allies." The conversation fueled her further, the past revelations intertwining with present warnings. Her journal swelled with these new receipts, Marcus's insights transcribed alongside the voice memos, a tapestry of truth emerging. The uncovering wasn't just painful, it was liberating. Each layer peeled back, exposing the fraud, propelling her toward a future untainted by lies. The blueprint sharpened, her departure no longer a vague notion, but a looming certainty, forged in the fires of rediscovered clarity. The evening air carried the scent of rosemary and garlic from the kitchen, where Penda and Kosi orchestrated yet another gathering, an intimate dinner party under the guise of casual camaraderie, but in reality a meticulously set trap to expose the fractures she alone could see. The long table in their dining room gleamed under soft chandelier light, laden with dishes she had prepared with deliberate care, grilled lamb chops marinated in African spices, a nod to her heritage that now felt like quiet defiance, roasted vegetables glistening with olive oil, and a decadent red wine reduction that mirrored the blood simmering in her veins. Guests arrived in waves, colleagues, neighbors, the usual suspects from their shared social orbit, chattering about mundane triumphs and trivial woes. Thomas played the consummate host, his laughter booming as he uncorked bottles, his white shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms she once traced with affection. Lillian slipped in last, her presence like a silk veil over sharpened steel, dressed in a floral blouse that fluttered as she hugged Penda. "This smells amazing, as always," Lillian cooed, her eyes sparkling with feigned innocence. Penda smiled, her lips curving just enough to mask the storm, and replied, "I aim to please everyone." As the group settled around the table, conversations flowed like the wine. But Penda's senses were heightened, attuned to every subtle cue. She watched Thomas and Lillian with the precision of a predator, noting how their bodies oriented toward each other, even in a crowded room. The way Lillian's knee brushed his under the table during a lively debate on city politics, the shared glance when a guest mentioned a recent art exhibit they had both happened to attend separately. The chemistry crackled unspoken, a current that electrified the air for those who knew to look. Penda bided her time, interjecting lightly at first, her voice a velvet blade. When a neighbor teased, "You two finish each other's sentences like an old married couple," pointing between Thomas and Lillian with a fork, the table erupted in chuckles. Penda leaned forward, her dark eyes locking onto theirs with a serene smile. "They align so well, almost like they've been practicing." The words landed softly, wrapped in humor, but the undercurrent sliced deep. A hush flickered across the group, brief as a shadow, and Lillian coughed into her napkin, her cheeks flushing faintly. Thomas recovered with a forced laugh, steering the talk to safer waters. But Penda saw the tell, the tightening of his jaw, the avoidance in his gaze. It was a subtle exposure, a pinpoint of light piercing their veil, and it thrilled her, this quiet power play where she held the reins. Dessert followed. Tiramisu layered with espresso and cream, each bite a bittersweet reminder of indulgences turned sour. Penda cataloged the evening's revelations mentally, her mind a ledger of indiscretions. Lillian's hand lingering on Thomas's arm as she passed the cream. The inside joke about a forgotten umbrella that drew knowing smirks from them alone. As guests departed with hugs and promises of reciprocity, Lillian pulled Penda aside in the foyer, her whisper conspiratorial. "We should do this more often. Keeps things lively." Penda met her eyes unblinking. "Lively indeed. You never know what might surface." Lillian's smile wavered, a crack in the porcelain before she slipped out into the night. Alone in the aftermath, with Thomas stacking dishes obliviously, Penda retreated to her journal. Pages filled rapidly under her pen, timelines sketched with arrows linking dinner glances to prior work absences, assets noted, bank accounts, shared properties, her savings as a lifeline, an evacuation plan emerging in bullet points, from legal consultations to safe havens like Aisha's. It wasn't rage driving her now, but clarity, a cold, crystalline focus that turned exposure into strategy. Driven by this newfound lucidity, Penda embarked on a pilgrimage of confirmation the following day, her car slicing through urban veins toward the address etched in her mind from the lease. The downtown apartment complex loomed modest yet modern, brick facades hiding secrets in plain sight. She parked a block away, heart steady as she walked the sidewalk, each step a deliberate advance. At the base of the staircase leading to the second-floor unit, she paused, gazing up. The curtains were drawn, but the balcony betrayed them. Two wine glasses sat abandoned on a side table, lipstick staining one rim, a scarf, Lillian's favorite, patterned in blues and golds, draped casually over the rail. And by the door, Thomas's sneakers, scuffed from his weekend jogs, positioned as if he belonged there. No voices emanated, no shadows moved, but the visual indictment was damning, a tableau of domesticity that mocked her own home. Penda didn't ascend. She didn't knock or rage. Instead, she turned away, a lightness blooming in her chest, the weight of doubt lifting. Confirmation wasn't shattering anymore. It was liberating, a final puzzle piece slotting into place. That lightness carried her through the evening until Marcus Blackwell appeared at her door, unannounced as ever, a takeout bag from her beloved Ethiopian spot dangling from his hand. "Thought you might need sustenance," he said, his tall frame filling the entryway, his smile genuine amid the chaos of her world. Penda welcomed him in, the aroma of injera and spicy stews a comforting intrusion. They settled on the couch, plates balanced on knees, the conversation starting light. his latest tech breakthrough, her feigned updates on marketing campaigns. But Marcus, with his intuitive depth forged in boardrooms and battles, sensed the undercurrents. You're carrying something heavy, Penda. Not just tired. It's like you're awakening from a long sleep. His words pierced, devoid of romance. Pure brotherly concern. She hesitated, then shared fragments. The overheard cruelty, the gathering proofs, without naming the players yet. Marcus listened, his expression darkening, then leaned forward. You're not fading, you're awakening. Whatever this is, you've got the strength to rise above it. And if you need backup, I'm here. His support was a balm, untainted by ulterior motives, soothing the isolation that had gripped her. As he left, promising discretion, Penda felt fortified, the subtle exposures of the night crystallizing into resolve. The game was hers now, each revelation a step toward freedom, the exposures no longer wounds but weapons in her arsenal. The clock on the nightstand glowed a soft amber, its digits blurring in Penda Nkosi's vision as she sat on the edge of the bed, the phone a cold anchor in her palm. The house was silent, save for the distant hum of the city outside, a world oblivious to the seismic shift unfolding within these walls. Her heart, once a tumultuous sea, now beat with the steady rhythm of inevitability. The evidence, photos, screenshots, journal entries, lay compiled in her mind like a dossier of indictments, irrefutable and damning. Thomas was out, claiming another late client meeting, but Penda knew better. The patterns had crystallized into truth. Tonight, the confrontation would not be a blaze of fury, but a precise incision, severing the ties that had bound her to illusion. She scrolled to his name in her contacts, thumb hovering for a breath before pressing dial. The line rang once, twice, then connected with a groggy murmur. Penda? Everything okay? It's late. Thomas's voice carried that familiar veneer of concern, the one that had once fooled her into feeling cherished. But now it rang hollow, a performance unmasked. She drew a steady breath, her tone eerily calm, laced with the steel she had forged in solitude. I know about the apartment and Lillian. Silence stretched like a taut wire, the kind that snaps under pressure. On the other end, she could almost hear his mind racing, scrambling for footing. What? What are you talking about? He stammered, the words tumbling out in a rush, his composure cracking like thin ice. Penda, listen, it's not what you think. The apartment, it's just an investment. Something for us, for the future. And Lillian? She's our friend, nothing more. You've got it all wrong. The excuses poured forth, a desperate torrent. Stories of innocent lunches twisted into misunderstandings. Late nights at the office that coincidentally aligned with Lillian's absences, pleas laced with half-truths about stress and miscommunication. We've been drifting, babe, but this is paranoia. You know I love you, our life, our marriage. Remember how we fought for this, against everyone who doubted us? His voice pitched higher, grasping at nostalgia, invoking their interracial bond as a shield, as if the very challenges they had overcome could absolve him now. Penda listened, her free hand clenched into a fist, nails digging crescents into her palm. The humiliation of that overheard call echoed in her ears, their laughter at her desperation, the mockery of her dreams. But she didn't interrupt, not yet. Let him dig his grave deeper. Each lie was another shovel of dirt. Finally, as his words faltered into breathless repetition, I can explain. Just come home and we'll talk. She cut through, her voice a whip crack of finality. Don't insult me with stories, Thomas. I've heard enough lies in your laughter. The line went quiet again, his breath catching in a gasp of panic. Penda, wait. But she didn't. With a deliberate tap, she ended the call, the screen going dark like a curtain falling on a tragic play. The phone buzzed almost immediately, frantic texts lighting up the display. Call me back. This is a mistake. I love you. Let's fix this. She stared at them, a barrage of digital desperation, but her finger hovered and then swiped them away, unread, unanswered. Silence, her weapon, her sanctuary, reclaimed the room. For the first time, it wasn't imposed upon her. She owned it. a sovereign queen in her domain. The confrontation had been bloodless, no screams or shattered glass, but its impact reverberated through her, a quiet victory that left her standing taller amid the ruins. In the weeks that followed, the silence became her armor, impenetrable and deliberate. Thomas's attempts escalated, voicemails pleading for meetings, flowers arriving at her office with notes scrawled in his hurried script. "We need to talk. I can't lose you." But Penda deleted them without a listen, tossed the bouquets unopened. She moved through her days with mechanical precision, work a distraction, Aisha's home a refuge for whispered strategies. The journal, now a tome of liberation, held her final preparations, lists of divided assets, contacts for a discreet lawyer, a suitcase mentally packed. The decision crystallized one quiet evening as she stood in their bedroom, the space that had once pulsed with shared dreams, now echoing emptiness. It was time. She pulled the suitcase from the closet, its wheels whispering across the hardwood as she filled it methodically. Clothes folded with care, her journal tucked securely inside, essentials for a new beginning. No haste, no chaos, just the calm efficiency of someone reclaiming her narrative. On the bedside table, she placed a single sheet of paper, her handwriting elegant and unyielding. "Thomas," it began, "I won't list your betrayals. You know them intimately. The mockery, the secrets, the life you built behind my back. I'm not leaving because I'm weak or broken. I'm leaving because I finally remember who I am without you. A woman deserving of truth, respect, and a love that doesn't come with strings of deceit. No accusations, no venom, just stark honesty, a mirror held up to his facade." Beside the letter, she set her wedding ring, the gold band catching the lamplight one last time, a symbol returned, not discarded in anger, but released with grace. With the suitcase in hand, Penda walked through the house one final time, her heels echoing softly like a farewell march. The living room, with its framed photos of smiling faces, deceptive snapshots of happiness, drew a fleeting glance, but she didn't linger. The kitchen, where shared meals had once fostered illusions of unity, passed without regret. At the front door, she paused, inhaling deeply, the night air cool and inviting as she stepped out. The door clicked shut behind her, a definitive punctuation. No backward glance. There was nothing left to salvage in the wreckage. She slid into her car, the engine purring to life, and drove into the enveloping darkness, toward Aisha's waiting light, or perhaps beyond, to a horizon uncharted, but hers alone. Dignity wasn't just her exit, it was her triumph, a quiet roar that echoed louder than any confrontation ever could. The invitation to the bachelorette party had arrived like an unwelcome ghost, scripted in glittering font on pink cardstock, summoning Penda and Kosi to a night of revelry for a mutual friend whose joy now felt worlds away from her own. She hadn't planned to attend. Why immerse herself in celebrations of love when her own had been a farce? But something deeper compelled her, a need for closure, a final whisper to echo the betrayal that had reshaped her. Weeks had passed since her departure, a clean break that left Thomas scrambling in the void. But Penda had moved with purpose, crashing on Aisha's couch at first, then securing a small apartment downtown where the city's pulse drowned out the echoes of her old life. Tonight she stepped into the venue, a trendy loft aglow with string lights and laughter, dressed in an emerald green gown that hugged her figure like armor, her natural curls cascading freely, a crown of reclaimed power. The room thrummed with energy, women in sequins clinking glasses, sharing stories of romance and mishaps, the bride-to-be at the center, radiant and oblivious. Whispers followed Penda's entrance, subtle glances, hushed questions about what happened. But she held her head high, navigating the crowd with grace honed from survival. Lillian was there, of course, positioned near the dessert table like a fixture of false festivity. Her laughter forced as she regaled a group with tales of past escapades. When their eyes met across the room, Lillian's smile froze, a porcelain crack spreading. Penda approached slowly, her steps measured, the air thickening with unspoken tension. She hugged the bride first, slipping a gift into the pile with warm wishes, then turned to Lillian, leaning in close amid the din. "You were right," Penda whispered. her breath warm against Lillian's ear, voice low and laced with velvet steel. I was desperate, but not for love, for truth. And now everyone knows. The words hung like smoke, intimate and incendiary. Lillian stiffened, her face paling to the shade of parchment, eyes widening in a flicker of panic. Penda pulled back, her gaze unyielding, a serene smile playing on her lips as murmurs rippled through the nearby cluster. Curious ears catching fragments, heads turning. Lillian stammered something incoherent, a feeble, Penda, wait, but the damage was done. The truth once confined to Penda's journal now seeped into the social ether, whispers multiplying like shadows at dusk. By the night's end, as toasts echoed and confetti fell, the rumors had taken root, hushed speculations about affairs, betrayals, the unraveling of picture-perfect lives. Penda exited without fanfare, the loft's door closing behind her like a chapter's end, leaving Lillian adrift in a sea of judgmental glances. Consequences unfurled like a slow-burning fuse, igniting the lives Penda had left behind. Thomas Harrington, once the epitome of polished success, found his world fracturing under the weight of isolation. Family gatherings grew sparse. His parents, who had always harbored subtle reservations about their diverse daughter-in-law, now distanced themselves with polite excuses. Dinners canceled, calls unanswered. We heard things, his mother murmured during one strained conversation, her voice laced with disappointment. Clients at the firm grew wary, whispers of personal instability seeping into professional realms. Deals hesitated, partnerships reconsidered, his once sterling reputation tarnished by the scandal's shadow. He sat alone in their empty house, now his solitary domain, gripping Penda's letter like a talisman, rereading her words until they blurred. Panic replaced pride, his charm failing against the wall of contempt from those who once adored him. Even Marcus, ever the perceptive ally, offered no quarter. His final words to Thomas, a cutting rebuke. You fooled yourself thinking she wouldn't wake up. Now live with the silence. Lillian's downfall was quieter, a crumbling from within, incremental and inexorable. Her social circle, once a vibrant web of brunches and confidences, grew cold. Invitations dwindled, texts went unread, and the exclusion was subtle but suffocating. Rumors circulated like poison ivy. Did you hear about her and Thomas? Poor Penda. Lillian was supposed to be her best friend. Her fiancé, Marvin, confronted her in their kitchen one evening, phone in hand, his face etched with betrayal. Why is your name on a lease with him? A friend in real estate confirmed it. An apartment, Lillian, with Thomas. She reached for denials, but they crumbled under his gaze. It didn't mean anything, she whispered, but the words rang empty, a hollow echo of her own deceptions. The engagement dissolved in tears and returned rings, Marvin walking away with quiet finality. You betrayed someone who would have taken a bullet for you. For what? A man who couldn't even stay faithful to his vows. Her office became a gauntlet of pitying looks and judgmental whispers. Promotions stalled, alliances frayed. In desperation, she called Thomas, her voice cracking with accusation. You promised a life, now I've lost everything. His reply was cold, defeated. So have I. We're both ghosts now. The realization hit her like a wave. The gamble on stolen moments had cost her the world, leaving her isolated, a pariah in the circles she once ruled. Amid the fallout, Penda found solace in unexpected serenity, drawn one crisp afternoon to the edge of a serene lake on the city's outskirts. The water lapped gently at the shore, a mirror of calm reflecting the sky's vast expanse. She sat on a weathered bench, journal in lap, the pages a chronicle of her journey, from shattered illusions to whispered truths. Flipping to the final blank sheet, she penned with steady hand, Betrayal began this. Peace ends it. The words flowed, a cathartic release, closing the tome on pain and opening to possibility. No tears fell. Instead, a quiet exhale, the weight lifting like mist in the sun. Fate wove another thread soon after, at a bustling weekend market where vendors hawked fresh produce and handmade crafts under colorful awnings. Penda wandered the stalls, a woven bag slung over her shoulder, sampling fruits and soaking in the anonymity. A familiar voice called her name, Marcus Blackwell, emerging from the crowd with a bag of oranges and that easy smile. "You always had a knack for finding the best spots," he said, falling into step beside her. Their conversation meandered lightly at first. His mentorship projects for young black entrepreneurs, her freelance writing gigs chronicling women's stories of resilience. They settled on a bench with fruit drinks in hand, the tart sweetness a counterpoint to deeper words. "Your presence feels like honest peace," she admitted softly. No rush toward romance. Just appreciation for a connection unmarred by deceit. Marcus nodded, his eyes kind. "No pressure, just here if you want to start something real." In that moment, amid the market's vibrant hum, Penda felt the first stirrings of renewal, consequences not just punitive, but paving the way for her own quiet renaissance. The auditorium hummed with a quiet anticipation, the air thick with the scent of fresh coffee and whispered conversations among the women gathered under the warm glow of overhead lights. Penda Nkosi stood backstage, her fingers tracing the edges of her journal like a talisman, the leather cover worn from months of furious scribbling and soul-bearing revelations. The banner overhead read, "Reclaiming the Narrative, Voices that Chose Themselves," a fitting mantra for this local women's seminar, a space carved out for stories of resilience amid a world that often sought to silence them. She had been invited to speak after a freelance article she wrote, chronicling anonymous tales of betrayal and rebirth, caught the organizer's eye. At first, doubt had gnawed at her. Why expose her scars to strangers? But as she peered through the curtain at the diverse faces, young professionals, mothers, survivors all, Penda felt a pull, a calling to transform her private victory into a beacon for others. This wasn't vengeance. It was reclamation, a declaration that her strength had been forged in the crucible of deceit, emerging unscarred and unbreakable. The moderator's voice echoed through the speakers, introducing her with warmth. "Our next speaker is Penda Nkosi, a marketing expert and writer whose journey reminds us that silence can be the loudest form of power." Applause rippled as Penda stepped onto the stage, the spotlight bathing her in a golden hue. She wore a deep maroon blouse tucked into crisp slacks, her curls pulled into a regal bun that framed her face like a crown. Her voice, when it came, was gentle yet commanding, drawing the audience in like a storyteller around a fire. "I'm not here to speak as a victim," she began, her eyes scanning the room, connecting with nods and knowing glances. "I'm here as someone who stayed on the line long enough to hear the truth and chose to rewrite her story from there." She wove her tale with masterful restraint, avoiding the sensational details that could cheapen the depth, the names, the racial undercurrents of her interracial marriage, the specifics of infidelity and mockery. Instead, she painted in emotions, vivid strokes that resonated universally. "It started with a phone call I wasn't meant to hear," she said, her tone measured, pulling the audience into the intimacy of that moment. "Words that stripped away the illusions I'd clung to. A husband's affection turned venomous, a best friend's loyalty revealed as a facade. I was mocked for my desperation, for wanting love in a world that often questions whether women like me deserve it without caveats." Murmurs of empathy rose, heads nodding in shared recognition. Penda paused, letting the weight settle, her hands gesturing fluidly as if sculpting the air. The betrayal wasn't just the act, it was the humiliation, the way it made me question every memory, every vulnerability I'd shared. I could have screamed, shattered everything in a blaze of rage, but I chose silence, not as weakness, but as a strategy. Silence to observe, to gather evidence, to rebuild myself brick by brick. The room fell hushed as she delved deeper, her narrative building like a crescendo. I journaled the pain, transcribed the lies, uncovered the hidden life they built behind my back. Each discovery was a wound, but also a weapon. I was confronted not with shouts, but with a single call that severed the ties. And when I left, it was with dignity, a letter, a ring returned, no backward glance. Applause punctuated her words, but Penda pressed on, her voice rising with passion. "Silence isn't weakness. It's the prelude to power. It's patience in the storm, the space where you reclaim your narrative. I walked away not broken, but bending so I wouldn't snap. And in that choice, I found strength I didn't know I possessed. Questions followed, hands shooting up like eager flames. A young woman in the front row, her voice trembling, asked, "How did you know it was time to go?" Penda smiled, genuine and warm, leaning into the microphone. When staying meant losing myself more than leaving did, when the pain of truth outweighed the comfort of lies. Another query came from the back. "Did revenge ever tempt you?" She shook her head, her eyes steady. "Revenge burns out. Reclamation endures." I whispered the truth in a room full of echoes and let consequences unfold. They lost their worlds, isolated, exposed, while I built mine anew. The crowd murmured, moved, tears glistening on cheeks as applause swelled again, a wave of solidarity washing over her. As the session wrapped, a line formed. Women approaching with hugs, shared stories, thank yous whispered like confessions. "You gave me hope," one said, clutching Penda's hand. "I see myself in your words." Penda absorbed it all, her heart full not with triumph over others, but with the quiet power of connection. This was her win, transforming personal ashes into communal fire, emerging not just stronger, but as a guide for those still navigating the dark. Later, under the silver glow of a crescent moon, Penda walked to her car, heels clicking steadily against the pavement. The night air was crisp, invigorating, carrying whispers of new beginnings. No ache lingered in her chest. No shadows of doubt clouded her mind. She had reclaimed her strength not through destruction, but creation, speaking her truth, owning her narrative, releasing the betrayal like smoke into the wind. The seminar wasn't an end, it was a launch pad, propelling her toward horizons unbound. In that moment, as stars twinkled overhead, Pendencosi felt whole, her spirit alight with the unquenchable fire of a woman who had chosen herself. As we wrap up Penda's powerful journey from betrayal to unbreakable strength, I hope this story has resonated with you, reminding us all that true empowerment often begins in silence and blooms through bold choices. What are your thoughts? Did her quiet revenge inspire you, or have you faced a similar turning point in your own life? Share in the comments below. I love hearing your perspectives and building this community together. If you enjoyed this tale of resilience and rebirth, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories delivered right to your feed, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for joining me today. Your support means the world. Until next time, stay strong and keep reclaiming your narrative.